and welcome to this video of Business and Entrepreneurship Education, Grade 9. Today, we'll look at Unit 12, which is on trial balance. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the debit and credit items, draw the trial balance, prepare a trial balance from ledger balances, and prepare a trial balance from independent figures. What is a trial balance? A trial balance is a list of ledger accounts and their respective balances at a particular date. The trial balance is usually prepared at the end of each month or year. When transactions have been correctly recorded in the ledger using the double entry system and the accounts are correctly balanced, then the trial balance should always agree. This means that the total of debit balances should always be equal to the total of credit balances. The trial balance is prepared so that, firstly, it allows to check the mathematical accuracy of the entry recordings of business transactions. And secondly, it helps in the preparation of the financial statements. This is an example of Mobicom Enterprise trial balance. As you can see, the trial balance has been prepared for the end of the month of September. Therefore, it has the title Trial Balance as at 30th September 2019. In the title of account column, the different list of ledger accounts is written. For example, capital, cash, bank, equipment, among others. In the debit column, the accounts which have debit balances, for example, cash, bank, purchases, chong, wages, and rent, the respective amount is recorded. On the other hand, in the credit column, the accounts which have credit balances, for example, capital, sales, gain, their respective amount is recorded. At the end of the trial balance, you will see that there is the figure 86,900 in the debit column, as well as in the credit column totally spacebar. If you add all the figures in the debit column, that is 6,300, 13,500, 20,000, 25,600, 3,700, 5,500, 4,500, 7,800, this will make the sum of 86,900 rupees. Likewise, if you add all the figures in the credit column, that is 50,000, 35,800, and 1,100, this will make the sum of 86,900. This shows that the total of debit balances is equal to the total of credit balances, meaning that the transactions in the ledger have been correctly recorded. The trial balance can be extracted from a list of ledger balances. It can be obtained as follows. Step 1. Identify the ledger balances, balance BD, of each account. Step 2. Record them as debit item or credit item in their respective columns in the trial balance. Step 3. Add each column and check if the debit side agrees with the credit side. What does debit balances represent? Debit balances are recorded in the debit column of the trial balance. The balance BD is found on the debit side of the ledger account. As you can see, there is the cash account and the balance BD is on the debit side. Similarly, the purchases account also has its balance BD on the debit side. Assets and expenses have debit balances. Assets are what the business owns, and examples are furniture, trade receivables, cash, and bank, among others. Expenses are payments whereby money flows out of the business. An example of expenses are purchases, rent, drawings, inventory, salaries, and electricity, among others. What does credit balances represent? Credit balances are recorded in the credit column of the trial balance. The balance BD is found on the debit side of the ledger account. As you can see, the balance BD of the capital account and the sales account are found on the credit side. Liability and income have debit balance. Liability is what the business owes. Examples of liability are loan, trade payables, and bank overdraft. Income refers to money flowing into the business. Examples are interest received and commission received. This is an example of how a trial balance is prepared by extracting ledger balances. Number 1, we have the cash account which has a debit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as cash 5,100 in the debit column. Number 2, we have the capital account which has credit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as capital 15,000 in the credit column. Number 3, we have the purchase account which has a debit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as purchases 9,500 in the debit column. Number 4, we have the sales account. The sales account which has a credit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as sales, 2,600 in the credit column. Number 5, we have the right account. The right account which has a debit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as right, 2,000 in the debit column. Number 6, we have the drawings account which has a debit balance. Therefore, it has been recorded in the trial balance as drawings, 1,000 in the debit column. When we add all the figures in the debit column, it makes 17,600, and likewise, when we add all the figures in the credit column, it makes 17,600. This shows that the total of the debit column agrees with the total of the credit column. Now, we are going to prepare a trial balance from independent figures. The balances are available from the ledger of Surya, an entrepreneur who buys and sells potted plants, as at 30th June 2020. As you can see, you have cash 2,750, capital 20,000, vehicles 15,000, purchases 9,300, rent 5,100, Ravi, who is a trade payable, 7,800, sales 10,450, Raj, who is a trade receivable, 1,500, utilities 750, wages 2,300, interest received 250, and drawings 1,800. To prepare the trial balance in this kind of exercise, that is where you have independent figures, remember, you have to identify which account has a debit balance and which one has a credit balance. Income and liability has a credit balance, and expenses and assets has a debit balance. Therefore, cash is an asset. It means it has a debit balance. We write debit next to it. Capital has a credit balance. We write credit next to it. Vehicles is an asset. It will have a debit balance. We write debit. Purchases is an expense. Therefore, we write debit next to it. Rent, again, it is an expense. We write debit next to it. Ravi, who is a trade payable, that is, he owes the business money, we write credit next to it. Sales, which is an income, we write credit next to it. Raj, who is a trade receivable, that is, he owes the business money, therefore we write debit next to it. Utilities is an expense, therefore we write debit next to it. Similarly, wages is also an expense, therefore we write debit next to it. Interest received is income that has been received by the business, therefore we write credit next to it. And finally, we have drawings, which means that money has gone out of the business, therefore we write debit next to it. As we have already identified the debit and credit balances, we will list all the account balances and record the figures in the respective columns. Then we add all the figures in the debit column. This will give us the sum of 38,500. Similarly, we add the figures in the credit column. This will also give us the sum of 38,500. This shows that the total of debit balances agrees with the total of credit balances. Here are some links which you may refer for further readings on trial balance. Well, we have reached the end of Unit 12. Hope you have understood the concept of trial balance. Until the next, goodbye.